wrestling fans? Welcome to another episode of Best Wrestling Podcast. We are live on the video screen today, invading your interwebs, invading cyberspace. So much to talk about. I'm just one half of your audio tag team champions, joined as always by my friend, brother, partner extraordinaire, Matt Fitzgerald. Matt, what's going on?
I am excited for the Best Wrestling Podcast, but I'm not going to lie. I'm also a little bit tired as I just woke up because, once again, it's kind of early here in the northern North Pole of Alberta, but fired up to talk. Man, I'm excited to talk about some hot topics today with you.
Me too, man. We got a lot of good feedback. Last episode was our debut in the tag team video scene. I'm kind of going to miss this one half studio, one half car dynamic. Someone on Twitter last week said, I like you guys and your setup. It reminds me of old school hardcore crappy dude love, being me in my 2015 Hyundai, and then the transformed Vince McMahon corporate dude love, which being you in your studio. But I'm currently working on moving into soon to be future Castle McDonald, so both of us will soon have a studio set up soon. So much happened since we last hit the airwaves, Matt. I'm just going to begin with what I find most interesting, and that is the most infamous wrestling trial since the 94 steroid gang. Yeah. And that is CM Punk and Dr. Annan in the feud of the year. The verdict coming in yesterday, CM Punk not liable, Colt Cabana not liable. What are your thoughts?
Is it? Would you actually say it's the biggest trial since the steroid trial? Is that true?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so as well, for sure. It's definitely got some publicity and some mainstream attention. Yeah, I think that doctor is a piece of shit. And,
and you can say that now freely because the precedent's set, baby.
Yeah, I think he's a piece of trash. I was shocked when I heard that he was suing them for, what was it, close to $4 million each or combined, or was it just Colt Cabana was suing for $4 million?
No, both of them. What an a-hole move, too. He wanted $1 for every download and stream, and you're right, that's how it got up to $4 million. So silly, so stupid.
What a piece of dog shit, man.
I think he did himself no favors on the stand. I've been, trying to closely follow along with it. I think too that some people have speculated this. I agree with it. This could have some implications for the future Concussion lawsuit that will eventually get to trial, I would guess. Seems to me that, I don't know how close attention, at least prior to concussions becoming as big of a deal as they are now. Yeah. I don't know how close attention doctors and medical staff had been paying to them. I think that a lot of times wrestlers probably worked when they shouldn't have worked. Yeah. And I think CM Punk in the Royal Rumble 2014, man, I went back and watched that after, following this trial. Man, you talk about a piece of trash. He looked so beat up and hurt. If I was the jury, I just saw that tape, I'd be like, ugh, never mind this. Dr. Rahman is in the wrong.
So tell me more. So, because I know that got brought up a lot, and there was a part where Punk fell down and Triple H is in the gorilla, and he's like, is he hurt? So why was he was hurt going into the Rumble?
Evidently, yeah.
And what kind of hurt? Like, just, are we talking about that, lump that he had on his back that was, MHRA? Is that what it's called, Jonathan? Or, basically flesh-eating disease, isn't it? Like some kind of bacteria growth? MRSA. Yeah. There you go, MRSA, yeah.
That's right, yeah. And I mean, look, the fact of the matter is this, I'm not a doctor. You are a doctor, of course. That's right. But man, I'm just looking at that video again with my own two eyes. I watched it, and it's like, for the entirety of CM Punk's involvement, I feel just like he just lies down, writhing in pain in the corner of the ring, and then Kane hauls him out and chokeslams him. And it's like, to me, that's one beat-up dude who probably shouldn't have been in there. It's open and shut if you look at it, at least in my opinion.
And so why does the Rumble get brought up into the conversation? Is it where does that play with the whole relevance of this trial?
Well, I think that on the podcast, CM Punk's first kind of public revelation after leaving WWE talked about the Rumble in the sense of, I didn't want to be out there. I believe he said he felt he had a staph infection and beat up in a number of other different ways. And he brought up his concerns, and obviously he still went out there, and he kind of was the marathon man that they have at least one of in every Rumble. He was in there for a good half hour. He entered at number 1, and he probably shouldn't have been out there.
And so Punk felt he shouldn't have been out there. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said, no, you're good to go.
You're good to go. And, he obviously did go out there. And so Punk kind of aired those grievances, among others, on the Colt Cabana podcast, and that's when the lawsuit was brought forward.
So, because basically Punk was saying that he was shit in shoes.
Yes, and I guess that Dr. Annan felt that for some reason he was slandered just because Punk said, "Oh, they probably should have kept me out of it," which is pretty weak sauce for the standards of slander and libel.
Now, because I know that you have, some good education on this topic, and you're the right person to ask here. So, like, what is considered slander where you can actually take legal action versus what is freedom of speech? Like right now I'm on this podcast and his name's Dr. Annan, correct? I'm saying that correctly?
I think so, yeah.
So what's the difference between like freedom of speech and slander? So if I'm here right now and I say to our thousands of listeners, guys, Dr. Annan is a piece of horse shit, am I liable to get to be in trouble right now?
Well, I guess the basic underlying premise of those laws is if you tell a lie about someone and it hurts them, and hurts in the sense of causes them damage, that they lose money, that they have experience harm, then they can take you to court. Of course, the defense is, well, if you can prove it's either true what you said, or you can either prove that it's just a subjective opinion, then either of those is a defense. So I don't even know, quite frankly. I mean, I think what CM Punk said was even in the realm of opinion anyways.
Yeah.
So it was going to be very difficult for Dr. Annan to win. Now, CM Punk got on, just as an example, CM Punk got on a podcast and said that guy's not a doctor. Well, obviously that's a pretty open and shut case, but I think you're well into the territory of just subjective opinion. And, the dude's on a salary with the WWE anyway, so how can you say that he experienced damage? He was going to get paid no matter what. It was going to be a very difficult case for him to win.
And do you think, Jonathan, like maybe he would have had a better shot at winning, except his demands were just egregious, much like the steroid trial, where you believe that what Vince McMahon got off because basically the case against him was something just ridiculous, so they kind of threw it away? Do you think if he went in and he asked for, I don't know, gosh, $100,000, do you think he might have got that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that was a really pie in the sky ask, and so that probably sets the tone for it. And what's so funny? Anytime anything to do with wrestling goes to trial, there's always so much comedic value. And I mean, this trial is no different. I mean, here you have someone under oath, and they're like, "What does the CM stand for in CM Punk?" And it's just, it's always. And another, I guess, hilarious part of all this is within seconds of the verdict coming out, Colt Cabana has the T-shirts ready to go and launched on ProWrestlingTees.com.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like his picture of his face and off scot-free, the T-shirts went up immediately. So they were in the can, ready to go in case they were found not liable. So that's just hilarious.
Do you think he had a second batch of T-shirts ready with him behind bars?
like a bunch of '94 Vancouver Canucks champs hats that just get burned when they don't win. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, that's funny. So what a piece of trash, man! Trying to sue them for $4 million when probably he knew and is right that he was probably just not giving good medical advice. You bring up an interesting case. I wonder now when the concussion comes up and that does go to trial, will there be legal ramifications?
It's interesting to say. I mean, we've come so far. I think our sense of understanding has evolved. I don't mean to kiss up to the WWE, but I know, I feel like they're ahead of the curve. I feel they're even ahead of the NFL. I think back to Daniel Bryan when he was getting his first big push. He was having this match, if you recall, with Randy Orton, a street fight on Raw, and they stopped the match. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't a work. It was a total shoot. And Daniel Bryan writes about it in his book. He gets so hot at Triple H backstage, and Triple H fires back and it's like, man, no, we're concerned about your safety. So when I see things like that taking place, I almost feel like the WWE has been on top of the concussion thing as they found out information. So it'll be interesting. A lot of the people involved in that class action might just be looking for an axe to grind, have some sour grapes.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I want to ask you a question about CM Punk, though, while we're talking on him.
Yeah, let's do it.
One, I saw a picture of him yesterday. The dude looks more ripped than I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you think he'll win this fight. I don't know much about the UFC. Just wondering if you have any insight.
I hope he does. This is going to sound probably sad, but if I was to bet, I would think that he's not going to win. But that's only just based on his last match. Who knows? Maybe he's been fighting like a beast. I mean, this time it's not video recorded. It felt like the last fight was so Hollywood that I'm sure it was challenging for him to be able to fight for it. At least now he's probably in a place where he can just solely focus on it. Versus last time, didn't they have like that ESPN special going on the whole time, or some kind of TSN, mini series essentially that came out? And so I think if there's an opportunity for him to win, it will be greater this time. I just don't have much information on who his opponent is. And I do know that, how old is Punk? Like, he's in his 40s now, right?
I'd say he's got to be pushing 40, if not 40.
Yeah, so I mean, I think to be essentially starting your UFC career in your 40s puts you at a massive disadvantage and of course he's extremely physically fit, but I just don't know how much bumping on ladders can translate into defending full guard in the UFC.
I noticed that Joe Rogan and whoever he had on as guest were kind of bashing Punk and calling him like an amateur and all this stuff, which I really found weird because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, Punk is still a draw. Like, I remember I don't buy UFC pay-per-views unless it's like got Brock Lesnar or CM Punk or Ronda Rousey. And so, like, to me, I don't think you should be bashing a dude if he's going to bring in, a couple more 100,000 buys for you. I found that strange.
And he will too. Like, I'll be buying that pay-per-view. I'll watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if it's streaming it for free, pirated, but same kind of thing.
Hey, eyeballs are eyeballs, man. You'll at least see the advertisements they put on the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, he's a draw, and I feel like UFC, and I don't have too much information on the business, but I would have to think that they're not hitting the numbers like what they would have back in the day when you had, George St. Pierre fighting consistently. And I mean, they can't be doing anything close to when Brock fights, right?
Yeah, I mean, pay-per-view is a tough sell. The more time goes on and the more, as you alluded to, alternative ways that people come up with to watch these things. Yeah. If I was running the UFC and Punk wanted to have take 3, take 4, take 5, and just find him until he just goes in the ring with a dummy and wins, you want to put that on first on any pay-per-view if it's going to draw buys. Why not?
Totally. And at the end of the day, the UFC it's very similar to WWE. Like, they put on a circus and they have performers and they bring in some Skrilla bills. So suck it, Joe Rogan.
It's just a podcast full of venom, anger, and vitriol. That's like, man.
And before you start, I just wanted to shit on Joe Rogan a bit more. I find that he does flip flop a little bit, actually. Like,
yes,
yeah, he does. Like, depending on who he has on his show, I find that he conforms to their opinion, and he'll kind of pump it up a little bit. Like, if he has someone that's very left wing on his show, like he'll be a bit of a left winger. But when he sits down with Ben Shapiro, he becomes like somebody that you could think is very right. So I think that he flip-flops like Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons when he's bouncing around with his big shoes.
Man, and I find, too, people like just mindlessly cite Joe Rogan as their favorite podcast. Like, it's almost like they're brainwashed.
When it should be our podcast.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's right, because we don't flip-flop, man. We're so consistent in all of our views, 100%. There's been so much outside the ring extracurricular stuff, but I did want to, continuing the negative train, man, I've been really struggling to get through WWE TV these last couple of weeks because, to me, Raw this week, and it did do a historically low rating again, it was really bad. It was one of the worst Raws I've seen in years.
Yeah, it is bad. I couldn't agree with you more. And every time I check out the ratings, it just seems like it's a new historical low. And I'm thinking to myself, how much lower can it get? Like, how low are we in comparison to 1999? Like, are we getting back to the Attitude Era of low, or were they some of the highest?
Yeah, so the Attitude Era, I mean, you're talking about pulling in, I know they got as high as like 8.5 one time. There seemed to be like, I think they're never going to fall below a 2. I think there's 2 million people who would turn the channel to WWE even if it was the test pattern. But even the Stanley Cup Finals, and I mean, they've got a super, super interesting final this year. There's something that never used to be Raw, ever. And they pull a 5.0 this week and just destroyed Raw. Wow. So I found that telling.
Yeah, Raw's show is, I don't know, they need to bring back, it just needs something. Like, I feel that it needs better creative, or it needs better storyline, or it needs more controversy. I find it very vanilla at this point in time. So we need something that we need to shake it up, damn it.
And like, look, I'm not going to pull the wool over our listeners and viewers' eyes. Like, I cannot sit down on Monday night and watch the full 3 hours of Raw. During WrestleMania season, the last couple of years I found it pretty good. So my strategy is I tape and I fast forward and watch at will. And even this week I got burned. I remember I took off the fast forward button, and the first thing I hear is like Baron Corbin is going to be Constable Corbin to look after Raw for Stephanie, and I just get so angry, man.
I know, isn't that a joke? Like, oh
Yeah.
my god! I find that the only, and I should be careful with my words here, but I find that the best time now to ever watch wrestling is almost special to special on the network. And you're right, like the Raw and the SmackDown just seem like a lot of filler, and the storylines really escalate right before the pay-per-view or the special, whatever we want to call it. And you can almost just keep up with things today, hopping pay-per-view to pay-per-view. We need more, I don't know, we need like Ronda in the main scene with more online or more TV time. We need Brock defending the belt consistently, or a champion. We need Elias to have a push. We need Matt Hardy to have a push up to the main card because he's freaking hilarious. Bray Wyatt needs to just retire. And right there, I mean, that would be a good start. That'd probably get you up to 3.5.
Man, you know what I've been doing now? I've been actually just I don't even know if this is a thing in the States for our friends down south, but on the Score or Sportsnet 360 up here, they have the WWE experience, and it's just like 1 hour. And so it'll take the big angle from Raw, recap, the big angle from SmackDown, recap.
Yeah.
And that's been like my go-to. One more thing, man. All pay-per-views 4 hours now, except for WrestleMania and SummerSlam, possibly Royal Rumble being 5. Yeah. So 4 is going to be as short as it goes. Man, that's exhausting.
That's a long piece of content for sure, especially when you have. So how many hours do we have in the run of a month now for WWE? We got 3, of course, on Raw multiplied by 4. We got SmackDown, which is 2 multiplied by 4,
up to 20.
Then we got like NXT Takeover consistently.
Yep.
Or Takeover, I guess, would be at the big 4s, but you got like NXT, throw that in the mix. Then you have now you got the pay-per-view, which is extended up to 4 hours. Man, that's a lot of ad time, I guess, is maybe one way that they're looking at it. More opportunities to sell KFC chicken and Rocket Ball, the car game for soccer on PS. The stupidest effing video game that ever existed. It's a soccer game where you drive around and hit the ball with or a car. It's dumb.
So look, if you're as negative Nancy's as we are this week, make sure you watch things like All In and Ring of Honor and New Japan and the new MLW, Major League Wrestling, on Friday nights with the great Tony Schiavone commentating. And competition, got to create it.
Are we going to talk about my new favorite superhero, Jim Cornette, and his little bit of a rant that we came across on the interweb?
Yes, we are going to. I had heard about this for a long time, and then finally it came up in my YouTube recommended yesterday, the Jim Cornette Dairy Queen incident, legendary piece of footage from 1994. It's on YouTube's now, so you can pop it in and find it. It lived up to the hype. I've been waiting so long to see it. And I showed it to like Matt and all my wrestling friends yesterday. And it may be one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in my life.
I thought it was gold. I was busting a gut laughing the whole time. The one thing that I wanted to bring up here on the air, though, and chat about was, where do you think that falls in this world that we live in today of not wanting to offend people? Do you think that some people saw that and they and of course we're talking about the wrestling community, so people with a little bit more of a thicker skin, but that video gets out. Do you think that some people watch that and they would say that Jim Cornette is essentially like, that's like verbal abuse and like assault of the women because he called a female an ugly bitch?
Yeah, I think that if that happened today, like Jim Cornette gets shot or like arrested and thrown in jail for years. But yeah, it's definitely a product of the time. So I don't think that would happen today without much bigger consequences. Like, I guess if you examined it objectively, it probably is, a bit much, even if they did have to wait a long, long time for their food.
Yeah.
I just kind of try to step back and just realize it's just classic Jericho being this troll, this shit disturber, poking the bear. And, you look at analysis of it from years later and Jim Cornette talking about it and Jericho writing about it. What happens in the video is Jericho cusses and says the F-bomb twice, and it's the lady that freaks out at Jericho, saying, "Don't you cuss me out or I will give you no food." And that's what sets Jim Cornette off. And it's just so perfect, man. It's just absolutely perfect.
You're right. Jericho does like rile him up by just saying like, "Yeah, Jim will do it. Jim will do it." Like he just feeds that angry ego that's happening. So what year would that have taken place in?
So that was March of 1994. Fun trivia. I mean, we've got the Thrill Seekers, Jericho, very young, a 23-year-old Jericho, and Lance Storm in the middle. Jimmy Del Rey of the Heavenly Bodies tag team driving, Jim Cornette up front, of course. Inside the restaurant, Sonny and Chris Candido and Brian Lee, who would go on to be the fake Undertaker, were actually sitting in the restaurant when Jim Cornette leans in and yells. So pretty cool, legendary, infamous video. And one other funny thing, I don't know if you noticed this, but Jericho orders a banana sundae or banana split, but without ice cream. So at the tail end of the video, he's like, "Hey, make sure my banana's in there."
Is that what you were? A banana split with no ice cream? So
it's just a banana.
Oh, that's funny stuff, man. That's gold. I actually didn't know it took place in 1994. I didn't even know you could record things on video in 1994.
Oh, yeah. So, man, thank God someone had one of those, your dad at the Christmas concert type things, man. Yeah. Thank God someone had one of them. That is some gold, but I know that Best Wrestling Podcast has a lot of great new features as well, and I'm wondering if you could speak to those, Matt.
Yes, absolutely. So our newest feature, ladies and gentlemen, because you could be listening to this right now on, of course, iTunes and Google Play and these great places that afford us the opportunity to have a platform to host the podcast. But if you are listening to our voices right now, and if you want to check out some video feed, well, then head on over to YouTube, Best Wrestling Podcast, because we're taking the audio and the video now, and we're uploading it to all the YouTubers in the world as well. So you can check us out there also. That's some of the newest exciting material that we have, as well as our blog. If you like to read, if you want to have some written content and know what's going through our minds when it comes to different books, different things going on, of course, in the wrestling universe, check out Best Wrestling Podcast, the blog, and that's hosted on a very cool site called medium.com. And you want to check it out right now after we're done this podcast.
That's right. I'm going to be looking to get up a book review about a man who continues to be in the spotlight years and years later. That's Bret Hart. So keep an eye out for that. And, of course, always continue to follow along with us on social media, twitter.com. We're there as Real BW Podcasts, and, of course, on Instagram as well, Best Wrestling Podcast there. So much going on, so much to look forward to. Keep us tuned in visually or on the audio. So for now, Best Wrestling Podcast signing off, but don't worry, we've only just begun.